The pie chart shows what percentage of individuals are well versed in money management. More than half, 55%, of respondents said they were somewhat organized, while 21% said they were extremely so. 20% of people are unorganized, despite just 4% of people being completely unorganized. Generally speaking, the vast majority of individuals are pretty organized, whereas a small minority is completely unorganized. Three alternative meanders or loops with a water path are depicted in the illustration. The water runs through the meander in the first image, but the narrow neck of the meander begins to disintegrate owing to the power of the water. The next graphic depicts the progress of depositions in the narrow neck of the meander. The water is now rushing quickly via the fastest course, virtually cutting the small necks of the meander. The final photograph indicates that the meander has been entirely severed, and the water is flowing smoothly via the new, shorter and faster course. We can deduce that water has discovered a way around the meander on its own. The given image shows information on various household items and appliances for the year 2008 and 2013 in Georgia. There is no doubt that as compared to the year 2008, the percentages of all the items listed are more in 2013. If I closely look at the graph, I can say that cell phones and color TVs are the two listed items seem to be the commonest among Georgians as they measure more than 65% in all the years. On the other hand, they have a very few air condition units that are 5% and 7% in their dwellings in both the years. Cars and automatic washing machines are also less compared to other items. Overall, I can say that Georgians have more consumer goods in 2013 than in 2008. On this globe map, agriculture's 2014 share of total employment is depicted as a percentage. Of all agricultural employees, over 61% live and work in Africa, whereas the smallest percentages, less than 2.40%, are found in North America, Australia, and China. The majority of agricultural employees were found in Africa, whereas China, North America, and Australia had the lowest concentrations of workers. The pie chart below shows how commuters in Sydney, Australia use various modes of transportation. 60% of commuters rode the train, but 10% used the bus or a cab. People who walked, cycled, or drove accounted for only 5% of the population. Public transportation was used by the majority of commuters, while personal vehicles were utilized by just a small minority. Comparing house heating methods from 1950 to 1997 is depicted in this bar graph. Coal, natural gas, and fuel oil accounted for 32%, 25%, and 22% of all heating in 1950, respectively. In 1997, natural gas and electricity accounted for 50% and 30% of total energy consumption, respectively. Coal was the primary fuel source in 1950, while natural gas was the primary fuel source in 1997. The bar graph shows the time spent by Finland's residents on different types of telephone calls between 1995 and 2004. Local landline calls were the highest throughout the period, rising from 12,000 million minutes in 1995 to just under 17,000 million in 2001. There was a dramatic increase in mobile calls from approximately 250 to 9,800 million minutes from 1995 to 2004. Overall, although local landline calls were still the most popular in 2004, the gap between the three categories had narrowed considerably over the second half of the period in question. The vacation accommodation preferences of individuals in the United Kingdom in 2010 are depicted in this bar graph. In general, the English, Scottish, Northern Irish, and Welsh made decisions that were relatively similar. Approximately half of the people in each of the four nations decided to stay in hotels. This percentage was greatest in England, at roughly 55%, nearly twice as high as those who cooked for themselves and significantly higher than those who slept in campsites and trailers. The Scots and the Welsh followed a similar pattern. Northern Ireland is the only country that follows a different trend. A stunning image depicts the beauty of Mother Nature as well as a classic man-made edifice. It seems like a wooden bridge in the middle of a lush green forest. The bridge is rather lengthy, and the camera angle is fantastic since the shot depicts the entire length of the bridge from one end to the other. On both sides of the bridge, a lovely net protects it. The shot gives the impression of an elevated bridge, which may or may not be the case. Finally, because there is no ground or land visible in the shot, I may assume that the bridge is erected at a certain height. The graph below depicts the number of hours of sunshine in France each year. When we look at the graph, it's obvious to see that the light yellow at the top is fewer than 1,750 hours. In the center of the graph, you can clearly see some yellow, which corresponds to 1,750 to 2,000 hours of work. Orange indicates that it's been between 2,000 and 2,250 hours, or 2,500 hours and 2,750 hours. The red indicates that the clock has been ticking for longer than 2,750 hours. As a whole, the graph is a wealth of knowledge. Using this graph, you can see what genre of movie you enjoy the most. As can be seen from this graph, romanticism has the highest number, approximately 6. The second highest value, about 5, may be found in action, as shown by the graph. On the graph, you can clearly see that drama has the shortest amount of characters, which is about 1. We can observe that the number 4 is prevalent in humor. The color blue is clearly seen in motion. The predominant color in science fiction is yellow. In the end, it's a valuable image. Australian wheat exports in tonnes are shown in the pie chart below. The bulk of Australia's wheat exports were of the general purpose kind, totaling 25,109 metric tonnes. The 6,309 metric tonnes of organic wheat exported from Australia were the smallest amount. For the vast majority of exports, wheat used for general purposes was the most popular, while organic wheat was less popular. In the first photograph, a child is throwing the used bottle in the bin, whereas, in the other photograph, litter can be seen on the shore of a sea or river. These photos are giving the message that human activities are polluting the water and it should be stopped. The child who is throwing a bottle in the dustbin clearly giving the message that discarding used material in water is harmful to water-living animals. Between 1996 and 2002, mobile phone use in Brazil is seen in the graph. According to the graph, the maximum number of people of both sexes can be found in 2002, which is over 4,000. The graph clearly shows that in terms of women, the second highest figure was reached in 2001, which is about equivalent to 2,000. The graph shows that in terms of males, the lowest number was in 1996, when there were around 1,500. Finally, the graph depicts Brazilian cell phone usage from 1996 to 2002. This line graph shows the long-term changes in temperature, in degrees Celsius, carbon dioxide, in parts per million by volume, and dust concentration, in parts per million by volume. Carbon dioxide concentrations appear to rise in tandem with rising temperatures. Carbon dioxide levels of 300 ppmv coincided with a rise in temperature of about 4 degrees Celsius 325,000 years ago. Temperatures were lower in areas with greater dust concentrations. As an illustration, A-8C temperature change approximately 260,000 years ago correlated with a rise in dust concentration of 1 ppm. Over the course of millennia, temperature, carbon dioxide, and dust concentrations fluctuated dramatically. This pie chart depicts India's power usage by sector in 2014. Industry consumes the most electricity, followed by the household, agricultural, and commercial sectors. Electricity consumption in the household and agricultural sectors is about equivalent to that in the industrial sector. Electricity consumption in the transportation industry is insignificant. Electricity is mostly used in the agriculture industry to pump groundwater for irrigation. This graph gives information about journeys made by men and women in the United Kingdom in 2006 according to their purpose. According to the graph, we can see that there is the largest percentage of men-made journeys for commuting and business, following by shopping. However, only few of them went the journey for the holiday or walking. According to the graph, we can also see that most of the women made their journeys for shopping, following by visiting friends. In conclusion, walking and day trip is the most unusual purpose of journey in the United Kingdom. From 1970 to 2010, this graph shows how much fruit and vegetables Americans eat each year in terms of pounds per person. The average American in 1970 consumed about 240 pounds of fruits and 328 pounds of veggies per year. There were approximately 255 pounds of fruits consumed per person each year in 2010, while there were approximately 390 pounds of vegetables consumed each year. From 1970 to 2010, vegetable consumption was consistently higher than fruit consumption. Students who worked between the ages of 14 and 18 are depicted in this bar graph. In the 14-year-old age group, 24 kids did not work, while only one student did. A total of 14 pupils in the 16-year-old age group opted out of working, while 11 kids did. 3 students in the 18-year-old age group were unemployed, while 22 students were employed. Overall, the number of pupils who worked grew as they grew older. There are 2 sorts of structures shown, one for a hot environment and another for a cold temperature. The steeply pitched roof of the cool climate building collects sunlight while storing heat and reducing heat loss. During the day, the windows of the warm climate building are closed and covered, and at night, the windows are opened to allow for ventilation so that the stored heat may be expelled. When it comes to heat storage, one form of building is better than the other since it absorbs less heat.